Welcome to Arcadian. Few things in D&D are as controversial and taboo as fudging dice rolls. The theme fractures the community, with one half claiming it to be a necessary evil to ensure the enjoyment of the players, while the other adamantly refuting this argument by stating it perverts the game. I can see good points for both arguments, and even though I find myself in the no fudging side of the barricade, I can sympathize with the reasons most DMs present to fudge dice rolls. I may have my opinions, but ultimately, it's up to each DM to consider if they want to fudge or not. If you want to fudge rolls at your table, I have nothing to do with it. But are you aware of the consequences you'll need to embrace when your players inevitably realize it? Fudging is a term used to describe when a DM rolls dice behind the DM screen and, for any reason, decides to ignore the result and make up their own, effectively falsifying it. In reality, there are many more sneakier forms of fudging, such as adjusting the HP of an enemy in the middle of a combat, but in this video I'll talk exclusively about fudging when applied to the dice. In my opinion, this happens because of three main reasons. 1. The DM disagrees with the result. They think another one would be more interesting, perhaps even necessary to the story. In this case, they fudge the roll to enforce that ideal plot. 2. The dice produce an unexpected and undesirable outcome. Maybe an encounter proved too hard on the characters. Maybe some or even all of them are in danger of dying. Here, the DM pulls the punches and forges rolls to spare the characters. And 3. The dice are misbehaving. Maybe the encounter was balanced and the DM didn't make any mistakes, but probability screwed up. The players can't roll above a 10, the DM can't roll below an 18, so the dice are fudged to correct the unforgiving nature of statistics. You may have noticed that one of these reasons is not like the others. The last two refer to situations where the DM is trying to prevent a situation that will upset the players, at least in their perspective. But the reason that leads a DM to fudge a die roll in favor of a better version of the story has a name, and it's railroading. That's a different video. Look for it in the eye up there or down below in the Underdark when it comes out. It's always bad, don't do it. And if you even have the slightest doubt whether this could actually be okay to do, just consider this. If you think you have the right to falsify dice rolls in favor of a better story, why can't the players? Sure, you may think it would be awesome if this bad guy who failed their dexterity saving throw actually succeeded, so they may survive and reappear later in the campaign. But in the same fashion, a player could also think it would be much more awesome if they rolled a natural 20 to kill an enemy general instead of the 4 they actually rolled. Would you be okay with them forging rolls like this in favor of a better story? Probably not. So don't do it. I agree that sometimes the chaotic nature of the dice causes the story to develop in a direction that seems suboptimal, but that's the nature of the game. D&D is not a system perfected towards storytelling. It's a game where the overarching narrative doesn't matter as much as the gaming experience now. If you'd like to hear me talk more about this, I have a whole story when I made an enemy of a whole convention by stating D&D is not the best game for telling stories. Link in the eye up there or down below in the Underdark. If anything, denying the randomness of the dice will rob you of the improv opportunities that only arise when the story takes a violent turn towards a direction you never expected. Maybe that will make a poorer story compared to what you had in mind, but it will provide a better gaming experience. Deny it, and you'll be robbing these moments from your players and yourself. The second reason seems more justifiable. After all, the DM is trying to spare the players from a character death or another undesirable outcome that they did not foresee. It seems selfless, but it is often a symptom of a deeper problem, one which will continue to happen unless treated. Ultimately, it's to cover up a DM mistake. Either the combat was too hard, or the encounter was poorly designed, or the DM messed up a certain rule. I empathize a lot with this reason. After all, DMs are human and are entitled to make mistakes. It's legitimate to feel like the players shouldn't bear the consequences of the DM's mess up and solve everything behind the curtains. But doing that becomes a crutch that will always be there to solve the next problem, while also robbing from the DM the learning experience of dealing with that mistake and learning how to prevent it the next time. Rolling with the punches and risking that undesirable outcome can be intimidating, but you would be surprised how many times you think everything is doomed and a TPK is imminent when the players pull off a solution you never imagined. Even better, those do-or-die moments often become the most memorable moments in the campaign. But even if you don't want to risk giving that a try and allowing the dice to roll free, There are dozens of tools you can use before you even need to fudge a roll. For example, you can select different targets for your attacks to spread the damage and improvise some justification for it on the fly. You can make up intermediate fail states before a bad die roll means death. Even if there's a TPK and everyone is knocked unconscious, that doesn't always mean the enemies will kill the characters. They may take them as captives for questioning. And then we get to the third reason. Sometimes it happens. The dice are not behaving as we'd expect them to, and that is screwing up the game. Out of the three reasons, this is the one I feel more okay with fudging, at least as a player. You can't control math, and it's not fun to feel like you're losing something you should be winning. When thinking about this, I often find myself going back to an earlier Matt Colville video where he defends that, in situations like this, he feels okay with fudging because he sees the DM as a curator of the player's experience. I think that out of all the videos from Uncle Matt that I ever watched, this is where I disagree with him the most. Disagreeing with Matt Colville publicly. This is not a normal day for me. I can't say he's completely wrong. I do understand the advantages in curating player experience in this way. However, I feel more aligned with Colville and Mulligan's view on the subject. In fact, this applies not only to this last reason, but to all three. Regardless of the reason you're doing it, though the benefit of fudging dice are obvious, the risk is just too great. Few resources in D&D are as valuable as trust in the DM and in the unquestionable authority of the dice. There is a sense of verisimilitude and even fate when the facts in the game world are dictated by the roll of a dice. There's a magic to it. Not even the DM can override a public die roll. It's a fact. But if you fudge, you are supplanting that rule of the world and instating yourself as a god who can dictate what is real and what is not without dispute, which is unfair to the players. If you do this once or twice, you may fool your players, but every time you fudge another roll, it'll be more and more likely they will find out. And once that happens, and believe in me, it will happen, their trust in you is lost. And just like a kid who discovers that magic isn't real, just a clever illusion, it's impossible to go back. The players will never know when you're following the rules or just your whims. Nothing in the game will ever feel that real again. Even more than that, they might feel that if the DM is able and willing to break the rules everyone agreed upon to enforce a certain outcome they perceive as more desirable, not only are they helpless if their goal happens to differ from the DM's, since the power balance to override the dice is so unilateral, but even if it isn't, there's no point to it. Even if they fail, the DM can just Deus Ex Machina some roll to get the story where it needs to go. So what's the point in going through all the effort? On the other hand, if the players want to achieve something the DM doesn't want them to, they are doomed to fail. The DM will always be able to fake whatever role they need to enforce the outcome they desire. At that point of distrust, there is no point in playing anymore. The DM might as well simply narrate a story to the players because they will feel they have the same level of real input. This feeling of helplessness is poison to your game, and there is no cure to it, only a preventive measure. Never fudging. That being said, this can be hard for less experienced DMs, especially since some of the methods to work around potentially catastrophic dice rolls require a moderate amount of improv and skill. And despite what I've been saying so far, I don't mean to imply that fudging is inherently wrong and everyone who does it is a bad person. At some tables, there might be a time and a place for fudging. For all the disadvantages of fudging, there are also some relevant advantages, such as the ability to prevent unwanted events due to the randomness of the dice, or to enforce certain story beats that contribute to a more consistent and narratively enjoyable story. To those of you who identify with this, or those who, after listening to me this far, were not convinced by my arguments, I still believe you're running some risks that I personally don't want to run at my table. But you're not at my table. So by all means, play the game the way you want to. Just be aware of the risks you're taking. And also, one small piece of advice. If you fudge dice rolls, even if it's only very sporadically, in very important moments, maybe even just once in a campaign, never tell your players. Making that confession, even if they're the ones who are asking that question, will damage the verisimilitude of the game forever. As a DM, you are responsible for conveying an imaginary fantasy world as if it was real. To admit you break the rules of that world at will, even if the players know it was technically possible, it will shatter their belief in a way that can be irreversible. Once they see it's all smoke and mirrors behind the curtains, nothing will ever have the same weight again. Be mindful that if you fudge regularly, it's only a matter of time before they make that realization for themselves. Anyone who played D&D for long enough can read the signs. Once that happens, you will have a problem in your hands. If you feel this would be an issue you'd like to prevent, try staying true to the dice rolls for a while. See what happens. I honestly believe it results in a better experience for you, the DM, as well. Ultimately, fudging or not is your decision to take, and as I said before, it's kind of the game's fault too. D&D is not the best system to tell stories, not only because the game enforces a succeed or die mentality too often, but because of the chaotic nature of the dice themselves. Sometimes they do weird stuff and mess up our stories, making the temptation to fudge hard to resist. As I said a while ago, one time I said this in a TTRPG convention, and everyone instantly picked torches and pitchforks against me. If you want to listen to that story, you can find it here on my left. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the first Arcadian, and it's my belief that the truth is generally preferable to lies.